Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Roger Lovell ducked beneath the flickering holographic security barrier, his heart pounding against his ribs. The maintenance corridor of Xantar V's Grand Arena smelled of machine oil and ozone, a comforting scent to a professional con man. He pressed his back against the cold metal wall as a patrol of security droids hovered past, their sensor arrays sweeping the main hallway. "That was too close," he whispered, adjusting the fake competitor's badge that granted him access to the tournament's restricted areas. The badge projected a shimmering hologram identifying him as the Solar Belt Phantom, complete with fabricated combat statistics that would make any real warrior either impressed or suspicious. His compact spherical droid companion floated up beside him, its single red optical sensor narrowing in what Roger had come to recognize as disapproval. "Your heart rate indicates excessive anxiety, which increases probability of error by 23.7%, Bink stated flatly. "Perhaps we should abandon this scheme before you end up in a correctional facility." Again. Roger flashed his trademark half-smile, the one that had charmed countless marks across 3 star systems. "Anxiety? That's just excitement, my metallic friend. 10 million credits and membership in the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood await us. This is the score that changes everything." He pulled up a holographic display from his wrist unit, cycling through the tournament brackets. Names of legendary fighters from across the galaxy scrolled past, warriors who had dedicated their lives to combat mastery. Among them, inserted through careful digital manipulation and a substantial bribe to the registration official, was his alias. "Have all the fighters agreed to our arrangement?" Roger asked, lowering his voice as a group of maintenance workers passed by. Bink projected a list of names, each marked with a green check symbol. "Affirmative, though Grax the Orion champion is demanding an additional 20,000 credits up front." 20,000? That overgrown squid already cost us 15, Roger hissed, running a hand through his tousled sandy hair. "We don't have that kind of—" "You'll find a way," Bink interrupted. "You always do. Just remember, if this operation fails, I'll be forced to sell your credit history to the highest bidder. I calculate the Corellian debt collectors would pay handsomely." Roger grimaced. "Your loyalty is touching." "I'm programmed for profit, not sentiment," Bink replied, his optical sensor pulsing with each syllable. Roger peered around the corner into the main staging area where competitors prepared for the opening ceremony. Warriors of every species imaginable polished weapons, meditated, or engaged in intimidating warm-up routines. A 7-foot Kronos warrior bench-pressed what appeared to be a small shuttle engine, while a pair of telepathic twins from Altair 4 practiced synchronizing their neural patterns for tag-team combat. "They all look so legitimate," Roger muttered, suddenly feeling a flutter of doubt. "They are legitimate," Bink replied coldly. "You are not. Hence our elaborate deception." Roger checked his appearance in a reflective panel. His custom-tailored combat suit looked impressive enough with its padded shoulders and strategic armor plates that protected nothing vital but created a warrior silhouette. The scar he'd applied to his left cheek looked almost real in the dim light. "The opening ceremony begins in 17 minutes, Bink announced. "We should proceed to the staging area." Roger nodded, mentally rehearsing his character, a mysterious fighter who used an obscure combat style that involved minimal physical contact. His first match was against a Taurian brute who'd agreed to take a dive in exchange for enough credits to pay off his gambling debts. Easy money. "Just imagine it, Bink," Roger said, a dreamy quality entering his voice. "After today, we'll be set for life. No more scamming our way across the outer rim. No more running from debt collectors." "Probability of success remains at 47.3%, Bink replied. "Hardly a certainty." "When has certainty ever been fun?" Roger winked. Across the spaceport, the Royal Lycanid ship Moonwake settled onto its landing pad with the precision and grace befitting a vessel of its status. Its pearlescent hull shimmered under the crimson light of Xantar's setting sun, the royal insignia of the House Aranacaster gleaming on its bow. Inside, Princess Vicaria Aranacaster suppressed a yawn as she listened to her royal advisor drone on about proper protocol for the tournament's opening ceremony. Remember, Your Highness, when greeting the tournament grandmaster, you must bow precisely 15 degrees, no more, no less. The Xantarians are extremely particular about these matters of... Vicaria tuned him out, focusing instead on her reflection in the polished surface of the ship's interior. Her violet skin contrasted beautifully with her flowing silver hair and the ceremonial silver armor that hugged her athletic frame. Her most distinctive feature, her long silvery tail, curled gracefully behind her, its tip twitching occasionally with her restless energy. Her bright green eyes, so unusual even among her own people, reflected her boredom. This was her 7th diplomatic appearance this month, and each one felt more stifling than the last. As the youngest daughter of the Lycanid High Council, she was constantly sent on these goodwill missions, little more than a decorative ambassador to impress foreign dignitaries with her combat prowess and royal bearing. Lady Vicaria, her handmaiden Nyla whispered, leaning close, "Are you even listening?" "Something about bowing and not causing an interplanetary incident," Vicaria replied, flashing a quick smile that revealed slightly pointed canines, a remnant of her species' predatory evolution. "Don't worry, I'll be the perfect princess." Nyla's expression remained concerned. This tournament is particularly important for strengthening relations with the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood. Your father specifically requested that I behave like a proper representative of our people, Vicaria finished. I know, just like the last dozen assignments. She rose from her seat, her tail swishing with barely contained frustration as she approached the viewport. Beyond the spaceport, the grand arena of Xantar 5 loomed, a massive structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields where the greatest warriors in the galaxy would soon compete for glory, wealth, and status. "I should be down there competing," she muttered, pressing a hand against the transparent surface. "Not sitting in a royal box making polite conversation with officials." Nyla sighed. "Your Highness, we've discussed this. Members of the royal house cannot participate in foreign tournaments without express permission from the High Council, which my father would never grant," Vicaria completed bitterly. "Because princesses are symbols, not warriors. I know the speech by heart." The ship's internal systems chimed, indicating they had been cleared for disembarkation. Vicaria straightened her posture, her face transforming into the serene mask of royalty her position demanded. But inside, something rebellious stirred. "Let's get this over with," she said, moving toward the exit ramp. Then, almost to herself, "At least I might see some decent fighting." As she descended the ramp, a procession of Xantarian officials awaited, their formal attire glittering with precious stones and metallic threads. Vicaria adopted her practiced diplomatic smile, her tail curling into the formal position of greeting, high and proud behind her. "Welcome to Xantar 5, Princess Aranacaster," the lead official proclaimed with an elaborate bow. "We are honored by your presence at our humble tournament." "The honor is mine," Vicaria replied automatically, bowing precisely 15 degrees. "I look forward to witnessing the legendary warriors of the Brotherhood in combat." As the formalities continued, Vicaria's mind wandered to the arena. Perhaps, just once, she could slip away from her handlers and witness the tournament from somewhere other than a sterile royal viewing box. Somewhere she could feel the energy of combat, the thrill that called to her warrior blood. She smiled at another official. nodded at something her advisor whispered in her ear, and made a decision. Tonight, Princess Vicaria Aranacaster would find some adventure of her own. The grand arena of Xantar 5 throbbed with the energy of 10,000 spectators as holographic displays showcased past champions and current favorites. Advertisements for everything from performance-enhancing nanites to luxury star cruisers floated through the air while betting kiosks processed wagers at frantic speeds. Behind the scenes, Roger paced nervously in a preparation chamber reserved for competitors. Bink hovered silently in the corner, running continuous scans for security breaches. Xantarian officials approaching, the droid warned suddenly. Biosigns indicate heightened scrutiny. Recommendation: appear busy and legitimate. Roger grabbed a practice sword from a nearby rack and began executing what he hoped looked like complex combat forms, but resembled more of a drunken dance with a metal stick. The door slid open and two tournament officials entered, their expressions unreadable behind their ceremonial masks. "Solar Belt Phantom?" the taller one asked, consulting a data pad. Roger struck what he hoped was a mysterious pose. "I am he. Your combat records are unusual," the official noted. "No recorded matches in any registered system." Roger lowered the practice sword, adopting his most enigmatic expression. "My techniques are passed down through a sacred lineage that values privacy above recognition. I fight not for glory, but for the purity of combat itself." The officials exchanged glances. "Nevertheless," the shorter one said, "all competitors must undergo standard biometric scanning before their first match." Roger's heart skipped. Biometric scanning would reveal his complete lack of combat training and physical conditioning. "My spiritual practices forbid such invasive procedures," he improvised quickly. "The energetic disruption would—" "These are tournament rules," the official interrupted firmly. Bink floated forward suddenly, projecting an official-looking document. "Perhaps this special dispensation from the Brotherhood's inner council will clarify matters." The officials studied the forged document with frowns that gradually turned to reluctant acceptance. "This appears to be an order," the taller one conceded, "though it's highly irregular." "The path of true warriors often is," Roger replied solemnly. After the officials departed, Roger collapsed onto a bench, wiping sweat from his brow. "That was close. What did you show them?" "A fabricated medical exemption citing rare quantum-sensitive cellular structure," Bink replied. "It cost us another 5,000 credits to generate on the fly." 5,000? Roger groaned. "We're hemorrhaging money before we've even started." "Consider it an investment in avoiding a 20-year prison sentence," Bink noted dryly. A chime sounded throughout the preparation area, signaling competitors to assemble for the opening ceremony. Roger took a deep breath, checked his fake scar in the mirror, and headed toward the assembly area. The first phase of his plan was nearly complete. He had successfully infiltrated the tournament. Now he just needed to survive without actually having to fight anyone for real. "Remember," Bink whispered as they joined the procession of warriors, "appear confident but mysterious. Let no one challenge you to impromptu demonstrations." Roger nodded, falling into line behind a four-armed Syzygian monk and in front of what appeared to be a sentient crystalline entity. He kept his gaze forward, avoiding eye contact with the real fighters. The procession moved toward the arena's main floor, where thunderous applause awaited them. Overhead, massive holographic displays showcased each competitor's name, homeworld, and combat statistics as they entered. When Roger's fabricated profile appeared, displaying impossible win ratios and mysterious classified techniques, a murmur rippled through the crowd. "They're buying it," he whispered to Bink. "For now," the droid replied ominously. While the opening ceremony captivated the arena, Princess Vicaria slipped away from the royal viewing box, having fed her handlers a story about needing private meditation time before the public appearances. She had exchanged her formal regalia for a simple fighter's tunic that concealed her identity while highlighting her athletic figure. Her silver tail, impossible to disguise, she had wrapped with decorative bands to alter its appearance. The backstage areas of the arena pulsed with energy and tension. Support staff rushed about preparing for matches, medical teams stood by for inevitable injuries, and fighters who weren't part of the opening ceremony practiced in small side chambers. Vicaria absorbed it all, reveling in the raw authenticity so absent from her official experiences. Here, there were no diplomatic niceties, no careful posturing, just the pure anticipation of combat. She turned down a dimly lit maintenance corridor, seeking a vantage point from which to watch the proceedings without being recognized. The sounds of the arena faded slightly, replaced by the hum of environmental systems and power conduits. As she rounded a corner, deep in thought about how she might someday compete in such an event, she collided hard with someone moving in the opposite direction. The impact sent both of them stumbling. Vicaria, with her warrior's reflexes, quickly regained her balance. The other person, a human male, was not so fortunate. He flailed wildly, reaching out to grab anything that might prevent his fall. His hand found her tail. Time seemed to freeze. Vicaria felt his fingers close around the sacred appendage that, in her culture, was never to be touched by anyone outside one's most intimate circle. The sensation sent an electric shock through her entire body. The human regained his balance, still clutching her tail, apparently unaware of the cultural catastrophe he had just initiated. Vicaria's bright green eyes widened to their fullest extent. Her violet skin flushed a deeper shade of purple. Her voice, when it finally came, emerged as a strangled whisper. You touched my tail." The human, handsome in a roguish way with tousled sandy hair and what appeared to be a facial scar, looked confused. He glanced down at his hand, still wrapped around her silvery tail, and quickly released it. "Sorry about that," he said casually. "Almost took a nasty fall. No harm done, right?" A small spherical droid beside him emitted what sounded suspiciously like an electronic groan. Vicaria trembled, overwhelmed by the cultural implications. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Grabbed something soft to stop myself from falling," the human suggested with an apologetic smile. "You've performed the sacred bonding ritual," Vicaria exclaimed, her voice rising. "The tail of a lycanid is our most sacred possession. It contains our essence, our spirit. To touch it is to... The human's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "To what? By the laws of my people, we are now..." She struggled to find the right translation in Common Galactic. Bound together. Joined. "You are my..." She searched for the word spouse. The human's face went pale. His jaw dropped open. Behind him, the small droid's optical sensor expanded to maximum aperture. "I'm what?" Roger bolted upright, heart hammering against his ribcage. Silken sheets pooled around his waist as his eyes darted around the unfamiliar room. Platinum light filtered through crystalline windows, illuminating what could only be described as royal quarters. Gravity chandeliers floated near the high ceiling, their soft violet glow complementing the pearl and silver decor. "What the hell?" he muttered, memories of the previous night flooding back. The backstage corridor, the purple-skinned woman with the silver tail, the cultural catastrophe he'd accidentally triggered. A fluid movement caught his eye. In the center of the spacious chamber, Princess Vicaria executed a series of combat forms with a gleaming battle staff. Her violet skin glistened with a light sheen of perspiration as she spun, thrust, and parried against invisible opponents. She'd exchanged yesterday's clothing for a form-fitting training suit that accentuated every curve and muscle of her athletic body. Her silver tail whipped behind her, serving as both counterbalance and occasional striking appendage. Roger found himself unable to look away. Each movement was precision incarnate, deadly, graceful, and hypnotic. Her combat style blended techniques he recognized with alien forms that seemed to defy physics itself. She completed a particularly complex sequence with a backflip that transitioned seamlessly into a low sweep, then froze in perfect balance. Without turning around, she spoke. "You've been watching me for approximately 7 minutes, human." Roger cleared his throat. "Sorry, I was just appreciating the technical aspects of your fighting style." Vicaria turned, her bright green eyes meeting his. A slight smile played at the corners of her lips. Most males of any species claim that when caught staring. She approached the bed, twirling the staff once before collapsing it to a compact cylinder that she attached to her hip. Up close, Roger noticed subtle patterns in her violet skin, faint markings that resembled constellations. "Good morning, my spouse," she said, the formal term contrasting with the hint of awkwardness in her voice. "I trust you slept well in our quarters?" "Our quarters?" Roger repeated, clutching the sheets tighter. "After our bonding ceremony last night, I could hardly allow my mate to sleep in competitor quarters," she replied matter-of-factly. "I had your belongings transferred while you were unconscious." "Unconscious?" "You fainted after I explained the significance of tail touching," Vicaria said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "Quite common among those unfamiliar with Lycanid customs. The cultural shock can be overwhelming." Roger's brain raced to process this new reality. Where was Bink? What about his tournament scheme? He needed to find a way out of this situation before... "I've arranged for your official introduction as my chosen mate during today's tournament proceedings," Vicaria continued, interrupting his thoughts. "The formal acknowledgement of our bond will take place before your scheduled match." Roger froze. "You're going to announce to everyone that we're married?" "Married is your human approximation," she corrected. "The Lycanid bond is deeper, a spiritual and energetic connection considered unbreakable by my people." As panic threatened to engulf him, Roger's con-man instincts kicked in. This unexpected development might actually work to his advantage. As the officially recognized mate of a royal, he'd be above suspicion. No one would dare question his combat credentials or investigate his background too deeply. He swallowed his anxiety and adopted his most charming smile. "That's quite an honor, Princess. I'm not sure I'm worthy of such a distinction." Vicaria's tail swished behind her, a gesture he couldn't yet interpret. "The sacred bond does not concern itself with worthiness. It simply is." She paused, studying his face. "Though I admit, I am curious why the universe brought together a Lycanid royal and a mysterious human fighter." Roger seized on the character he'd created. "The path of a warrior takes many unexpected turns." "Indeed it does," she agreed, her expression softening slightly. "Now dress yourself. Your new ceremonial attire is in the wardrobe. We are expected at the royal breakfast in 30 minutes, where you will meet my diplomatic entourage." As she turned to leave, Roger called out, "Princess, what about my companion, the droid? The small spherical unit? It has been granted access to our quarters and listed as your personal combat analyzer," she answered. "It seemed quite distressed last night, if droids can experience such emotions." The door slid shut behind her, leaving Roger alone with the magnitude of his situation. He sank back against the plush pillows and muttered to himself, "You've scammed warlords and crime bosses, Lovell, but this might be your masterpiece or your grave." The royal breakfast proved to be a tense affair in the private dining hall overlooking the arena. Roger, now dressed in elaborate silver-trimmed formal wear that matched Vicaria's royal colors, found himself under the scrutiny of her entire diplomatic contingent. 6 stern Lycanid advisors and 3 personal guards observed his every move with barely concealed suspicion. "So," began Nyla, Vicaria's chief handmaiden, while delicately cutting a piece of exotic fruit, "you managed to encounter our princess in a maintenance corridor, away from all witnesses, and accidentally performed our most sacred bonding ritual." Roger maintained his composed facade while sampling what appeared to be blue eggs. "Fate works in mysterious ways." "Mysteriously convenient ways," muttered a silver-furred male advisor. Vicaria set down her drinking vessel with unnecessary force. Are you questioning the validity of my bond, Advisor Thalen? The table fell silent. Even Roger sensed the dangerous shift in atmosphere. Never, Your Highness, Thalen backpedaled quickly, merely expressing surprise at its unexpected nature. The lunar scrolls teach us that the most powerful bonds often form when least expected, Vicaria stated with finality. The solar belt phantom is my chosen mate, recognized by ancient law. That is all you need to know. Roger nodded solemnly, though inwardly he was taking notes on how effortlessly she commanded respect. Under different circumstances, he might have targeted someone like her for a long con, wealthy, powerful, and just naive enough about certain aspects of the universe. A small holographic projection appeared above the table, displaying the day's tournament schedule. Roger's alias blinked on the screen, matched against someone called Krax the Devastator. Your first match is in 3 hours, spouse, Vicaria noted. I look forward to witnessing your mysterious combat techniques firsthand. As do we all, added Thalen with a thin smile. Roger maintained his enigmatic expression, though panic flared anew. Where the hell was Bink? He needed to confirm that his first opponent was still planning to take a convincing dive. After breakfast, as they walked the private concourse toward the arena's royal viewing section, Roger finally spotted the small droid hovering near a decorative column. He squeezed Vicaria's hand. If you'll excuse me, Princess, I must prepare mentally before the match. A few moments of solitude would be beneficial. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course. We warriors each have our rituals. As soon as she moved ahead with her entourage, Roger grabbed Bink and ducked behind the column. Where have you been? He hissed. I've been surrounded by suspicious Lycanids all morning. Calculating escape routes and damage control scenarios, Bink replied, optical sensor pulsing rapidly. You've managed to complicate our operation exponentially. Marriage to a royal figure from a warrior culture was not part of our risk assessment. I didn't marry her, Roger whispered frantically. I accidentally touched her tail. The practical outcome is identical, Bink countered. You are now publicly associated with Princess Vicaria Aranacaster, third daughter of the Lycanid High Council, graduate of the Stellar Combat Academy, and champion of 17 ritual duels. Roger's jaw dropped. 17 duels? She's actually a fighter? One of the most accomplished warriors of her generation, Bink confirmed, which makes your charade particularly dangerous. She will recognize your incompetence immediately upon seeing you in actual combat. Then we need to make sure Krax still takes the dive as planned, Roger muttered. Is he still on board? Bink's optical sensor dimmed slightly. Affirmative, though he's demanding an additional 5,000 credits. 5,000? Roger cut himself off, aware of passing tournament staff. Fine, pay him. But make sure he makes it look good. The following days unfolded in a surreal blend of public appearances and private moments that left Roger increasingly conflicted. His first match went according to plan. Krax, the Devastator, put on an impressive show of ferocious attacks that somehow all missed, allowing Roger to land a lucky finishing blow that sent the crowd into a frenzy. Vicaria had watched with intense focus from the royal box, her bright green eyes tracking every movement. Afterward, in their private quarters, she had bombarded him with questions about his unorthodox fighting style. I've never seen anyone evade with such unusual patterns, she observed. It almost appears as if you have no strategy at all, yet your opponents cannot connect. Roger had spun elaborate tales about a mystical combat philosophy based on quantum unpredictability and chaotic resonance, terms he'd picked up from a science broadcast and repurposed to sound like fighting techniques. To his surprise, Vicaria seemed genuinely interested in his fabricated combat philosophy. She listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and even attempted to incorporate some of his chaotic elements into her own practice routines. During these conversations, Roger found himself increasingly drawn to her. Beyond her striking appearance, Vicaria possessed a sharp intellect and dry wit that caught him off guard. She wasn't the pampered royal he'd expected, but a complex woman trapped between duty and desire. On the third night after their bonding, Vicaria had insisted on teaching Roger a traditional Lycanid meditation technique. Seated cross-legged on the floor of their quarters, facing each other with eyes closed, she guided him through the process. "Focus on your core energy," she instructed, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "Visualize it connecting with mine across the space between us." Roger, who had never meditated in his life, cracked one eye open to find her completely serene silver tail curved in a perfect arc behind her. The gentle curve of her neck, the rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, he found the sight more captivating than any meditation. "You're not focusing," she said without opening her eyes. "How did you know?" "Our energies are bonded," she replied simply. "I can sense your attention wandering." Roger closed his eye quickly. "Sorry, this is all new to me." After a moment, she spoke again. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why do you fight?" Her question carried genuine curiosity. Roger hesitated, caught between maintaining his charade and an unexpected urge to be honest with her. "I didn't always want to be a fighter." "What did you want to be?" The question pierced him unexpectedly. No one had asked him that in years. "I wanted to be an explorer," he admitted, surprising himself with the truth. "To see every corner of the galaxy without anyone telling me where I could or couldn't go." When he opened his eyes, Vicaria was watching him with an unreadable expression. "That sounds like freedom," she said finally. "Something I've had very little of." In that moment, a genuine connection sparked between them, something Roger hadn't anticipated and didn't know how to handle. His second and third matches proceeded as planned, though each victory required increasingly elaborate payoffs to his opponents. Bink complained constantly about their dwindling funds, but Roger found himself less concerned with the money and more preoccupied with maintaining his facade, specifically for Vicaria. "Your combat efficiency has increased by 23% since your first match," she noted after his third victory. "Your movements are becoming more fluid." "I have an excellent instructor," Roger replied with a genuine smile, surprising himself with how much he meant it. They stood together on a private balcony overlooking the nighttime cityscape of Xantar 5. The planet's 3 moons cast overlapping shadows across the metropolitan sprawl, creating patterns of light and dark that seemed to shift with the wind. "Tomorrow you face the Orion champion," Vicaria said, her tail swishing with what Roger had come to recognize as concern. "He's renowned for his 6-armed combat style. No opponent has lasted more than 30 seconds against him this season." "I'm not concerned," Roger lied, though in truth, this particular bout had him terrified. The Orion champion had demanded an astronomical sum to take a dive, money they simply didn't have. Vicaria turned to face him, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "There is something I must tell you." "What is it?" "On my world, when two Lycanids are bonded as we are, they traditionally share." She hesitated, her violet skin darkening slightly in what Roger realized was a blush. "Physical intimacy is an expected component of the bond." Roger's pulse quickened. "I wouldn't want to pressure you into anything your heart isn't ready for." "My heart?" She tilted her head. "It's tradition, not a matter of emotions." "Where I come from," Roger said carefully, "physical intimacy is generally connected to emotional attachment." Vicaria considered this, her tail curling thoughtfully. "You humans have strange customs." She stepped closer. "But I find them intriguing." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. Her bright green eyes searched his face as if seeking answers to questions she hadn't yet formulated. Before either could act, the door to their quarters slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Bink zoomed in, optical sensor flashing urgently. "Critical situation," the droid announced. "The Orion champion has refused our final offer. He demands the entire prize purse in advance." The moment shattered. Vicaria stepped back, eyes narrowing. What offer? What is he talking about? Roger's mind raced for a plausible explanation. "My combat analyzer sometimes processes tactical scenarios using financial metaphors. It's a coding quirk." She didn't appear convinced, but before she could press further, Bink projected a holographic message from the Orion champion himself. "Human fraud," the six-armed warrior growled in the recording. "Your pathetic bribe insults me. Tomorrow, I will reveal your deception to all. Prepare for humiliation or pay me everything." The hologram vanished, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Vicaria's expression shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension. "Bribe?" she whispered, her voice dangerous. "Deception." Roger's carefully constructed world began to crumble around him. "Vicaria, I can explain." "Are you truly a warrior?" she demanded, her tail rigid behind her. The lie stuck in his throat. Something about her honor, her trust, the connection he'd begun to feel, made dishonesty suddenly impossible. His silence was answer enough. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving his, "you will face the Orion champion. You will fight honestly, and you will prove him wrong." She turned and strode from the room, her silver tail held high in a posture of royal dignity that couldn't quite mask her hurt. Roger sank onto a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. "I'm a dead man." "Technically," Bink observed, "you're only 97.8% likely to be dead. There's still a 2.2% chance you'll merely be permanently disfigured." "Not helping, Bink." "Suggesting alternatives was never part of my programming," the droid replied. "Planning funerals, however, I can do quite efficiently." The arena roared with the bloodlust of 20,000 spectators as Roger stepped onto the combat platform. The semifinals of the grand tournament had drawn the largest crowd in Xantar V's history, all eager to witness the mysterious Solar Belt Phantom face the undefeated Orion champion. Roger's legs felt like lead as he approached the center of the platform. Across from him stood Grax, the Orion champion, 7 feet of rippling muscle and battle scars, with 6 arms each holding a different weapon. His yellow eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. From the royal box, Vicaria watched with an unreadable expression, her silver tail perfectly still behind her. The arena's automated announcement system boomed overhead. "Combatants, prepare for engagement. Semifinal match commencing." In 3, 2, 1, a thunderous gong echoed through the arena. Grax charged forward with a battle cry that chilled Roger's blood. "Time to die, fraud!" the Orion snarled, all 6 weapons arcing toward Roger in a symphony of lethal intent. Roger ducked the first swing purely on instinct, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He scrambled backward, narrowly avoiding a blade that would have opened his throat. The crowd roared its approval, mistaking his desperate evasion for calculated technique. "Is this your famous quantum unpredictability?" Grax mocked, pressing his attack. "Pathetic!" Roger stumbled, fell, and rolled, again avoiding death by mere centimeters. He caught a glimpse of Vicaria in the royal box, leaning forward, her eyes wide. "Fight back!" someone shouted from the stands. "Fight back!" Grax landed a glancing blow to Roger's shoulder, drawing first blood. Pain lanced through him, hot and immediate. This was no exhibition match. The Orion intended to kill him. "I paid fighters to lose to me," Roger shouted desperately, hoping to end this before it was too late. "I'm a fraud. I admit it." The crowd went silent in shock. Grax paused his assault, surprised by the confession. In the sudden quiet, Grax's cruel laugh echoed across the arena. "You hear that? This human is a cheat, a disgrace to the Brotherhood." All eyes turned to the royal box, where Vicaria stood rigid, her face a mask of controlled fury and profound disappointment. "Prove him wrong," her voice carried across the suddenly silent arena. "Fight, Roger. For real this time." Grax charged again, all 6 arms brandishing weapons with lethal intent. This time, there would be no missing on purpose. Roger closed his eyes, certain he was about to die. 3 seconds later, he hit the ground hard, unconscious before he even felt the impact of Grax's fist against his jaw. Pain stabbed through Roger's skull as consciousness returned like an unwelcome visitor. The sharp, antiseptic smell of the medical bay assaulted his nostrils, and the soft beeping of monitoring equipment tracked his vital signs with mechanical precision. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Every muscle protested as if he'd been trampled by a herd of Centaurian war beasts. A blurry figure loomed over him, gradually sharpening into focus. Vicaria stood at his bedside, her violet skin contrasting starkly with the sterile white walls of the medical chamber. Her bright green eyes studied him with an intensity that made him want to sink through the bed and disappear. 3 seconds, she said flatly. That's how long you lasted against a real fighter. Roger winced, both from the physical pain and the verbal jab. Felt more like 1 second to me. The other two must have happened after I blacked out. His attempt at humor fell flat. Vicaria's silver tail remained rigidly still behind her, a bad sign, he'd learned. When she was pleased or amused, it swayed gently. When angry, it lashed. This unnatural stillness suggested something worse: disappointment. "You're not a warrior," she stated, the words striking him harder than Grax's fist had. "You lied to me." Roger tried to sit up, ignoring the protest from his battered body. "Technically, I never claimed to be a warrior. I just didn't clarify that I wasn't one." "Deception by omission is still deception," Vicaria replied, her voice carrying the weight of a judge passing sentence. "Look, I'm a con man, okay?" Roger admitted, suddenly tired of the charade. "I scam people for a living. This tournament was supposed to be my big score, 10 million credits and entry into the Warrior Brotherhood, which I could leverage for even bigger opportunities." Vicaria's expression didn't change, but her tail twitched slightly, the first movement since he'd awakened. "So our bonding was just convenient timing for your scheme?" she asked quietly. The question carried implications Roger hadn't considered. Had she actually begun to believe in their accidental connection? Before he could respond, the medical bay doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. 6 tournament security officers stormed in, weapons drawn, accompanied by 2 tournament officials in formal regalia. "Roger Lovell, alias the Solar Belt Phantom, you are under arrest for fraud, tournament manipulation, bribery, and bringing dishonor to the sacred combat traditions of the Galactic Warrior Brotherhood," announced the lead official. "You will be detained pending trial, where you will face penalties including but not limited to incarceration in the Xantarian prison mines." Roger's heart sank. Prison mines were notorious across the galaxy. Few survived more than a year in the toxic tunnels. He glanced at Vicaria, expecting to see satisfaction that justice would be served. Instead, to his astonishment, she moved between him and the security team, her posture shifting to a combat stance so subtle that only someone who had watched her train would recognize it. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of royalty. The security team hesitated, weapons still raised. "Princess Aranacaster," the official began cautiously, "this man has committed serious violations." "This man," Vicaria interrupted, "is my bonded mate under the sacred laws of the Lycanid people. By Interplanetary Treaty Section 47.3, the mate of a royal house member falls under the jurisdiction of that house's legal system." The official frowned. "With all due respect, Your Highness, the treaty doesn't apply to fraudulent bonds." "Are you?" Vicaria's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "Questioning the validity of my bond?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "The touching of a Lycanid royal's tail is witnessed by the ancestors themselves," she continued. "It is beyond your authority to declare it invalid. Any attempt to arrest my mate constitutes an act of aggression against the royal house of Aranicaster, an act that would have diplomatic consequences. The security team exchanged nervous glances. Xantar V's economy heavily depended on trade agreements with the Lycanid Confederation. In the tense standoff, a small spherical form zoomed into the medical bay, hovering protectively near Roger's bed. "Gentlemen," Bink announced with unexpected authority, "I have taken the liberty of transmitting this entire conversation to the Lycanid High Council, the Galactic Media Network, and 17 independent legal witnesses. I calculate a 94.7% probability that pursuing this arrest will result in an interplanetary incident." The lead official's face contorted with frustration. "This isn't over," he warned, before gesturing his team to retreat. As the doors closed behind them, Roger stared at Vicaria in disbelief. "You protected me," he stated, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. "Why?" She didn't answer immediately, instead turning to Bink. "How quickly can we leave this planet?" "The Princess's royal shuttle has diplomatic clearance that would bypass standard departure protocols," Bink replied. "Your personal vessel, Roger, is already prepared for emergency departure, though it lacks the proper authorizations." "They'll be watching both ships," Vicaria noted. "We need a distraction." Roger blinked. "We?" Vicaria finally faced him, her expression resolute. "You touched my tail. That means something to my people, even if it was an accident. I won't abandon my mate to Xantarian justice. It would bring shame to my house." "So it's about honor," Roger said, trying to ignore the disappointment that unexpectedly tightened his chest. "Get dressed," she replied, ignoring his comment. "We leave in 20 minutes. The hangar bay erupted in chaos as synchronized explosions disabled the security force fields at 3 different docking ports. Alarms blared while emergency crews scrambled to contain the damage. Amid the confusion, a small freight hauler, unremarkable and outdated, detached from its moorings and accelerated toward the upper atmosphere. Inside the cramped cockpit, Roger gripped the manual controls with white-knuckled intensity, executing evasive maneuvers as 2 security vessels gave chase. "They're locking weapons," Bink warned from the co-pilot position where the droid had physically integrated with the ship's systems. Beside Roger, Vicaria accessed the defensive controls with surprising familiarity. "Deploying countermeasures," she announced calmly, as if being pursued by planetary security was an everyday occurrence. The ship shuddered as the first volley of warning shots passed nearby, illuminating the cockpit with flashes of energy. "We need to hit hyperspace now," Vicaria insisted. "Without proper exit vector calculations, we could end up inside a star," Roger protested. "Give me the controls," she demanded, reaching for the navigation panel. "This is my ship, and those are my people's weapons about to vaporize it." Their argument was interrupted by Bink's mechanical voice. "Perhaps you could postpone your first marital dispute until after we escape imminent destruction." A direct hit rocked the ship, throwing Roger against the restraints of his pilot's chair. "Fine," he conceded, releasing the navigation controls to Vicaria. "But if we die, I'm blaming you." Her violet fingers danced across the interface with practiced precision. "Calculated risk is the essence of both combat and life," she replied, as she input a series of coordinates. "Now." Roger slammed the hyperspace initiator forward. Stars stretched into luminous streaks around them as the ship lurched into faster-than-light travel, leaving their pursuers behind in normal space. The sudden silence that followed felt almost deafening. Roger released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding and turned to Vicaria. "Where did you learn to fly like that? I thought you were a warrior princess, not a pilot." A ghost of a smile played across her lips. "The Royal Combat Academy offers comprehensive training. Tactical space maneuvers are a required course." And your parents are okay with their daughter becoming a fugitive? Roger asked, the reality of their situation beginning to sink in. Vicaria's tail twitched, a gesture he'd come to recognize as discomfort. They will adjust to the situation. Bink detached from the ship's systems, floating between them. Hyperspace trajectory is stable. We will reach the coordinates in approximately 7 hours. However, I must note that our fuel reserves are insufficient for additional jumps without resupply. Where exactly are we going? Roger asked. To the one place they won't follow, Vicaria replied enigmatically. The abandoned mining outpost in the Kaltorian Rift. It's been deserted since the quantum storms made the region unstable for commercial operations. Roger's eyes widened. The Rift? That's suicide without proper shielding. This vessel has been retrofitted with experimental quantum stabilizers, Bink interjected, a modification I made after our last brush with Novacore patrols. You never mentioned that, Roger said, narrowing his eyes at the droid. You never asked, Bink replied simply. Information provision is based on necessity and relevance calculations. Roger turned back to Vicaria, who had fallen silent, staring into the swirling void of hyperspace. In the blue-white light, her violet skin took on an ethereal quality, and her silver tail curled tightly around her seat, a posture he hadn't seen before. Why did you really come with me? He asked quietly. And don't say it's because I touched your tail. The silence stretched between them, interrupted only by the hum of the ship's engines. Because I touched yours, she finally said, so softly he almost missed it. I don't have a tail, Roger replied, confused. Vicaria turned to face him, her bright green eyes reflecting the hyperspace streams. In your meditation, when you spoke of wanting to be an explorer, that was the first honest thing you said to me. I felt it, like touching something true and pure. My people believe that the tail is where our soul resides, but perhaps humans keep their souls elsewhere. Roger didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever seen through his cons to the person underneath, not even Bink, who had been with him for years. I'm still a fraud, he reminded her. A con man, a cheat. Yes, she agreed bluntly, but perhaps you can be more than that. Bink, apparently sensing the intensifying atmosphere, discreetly floated toward the rear of the cockpit. I will run diagnostics on the engine systems, the droid announced, disappearing through the doorway. Left alone, Roger and Vicaria sat in silence, the vast emptiness of hyperspace surrounding them like a cocoon, isolating them from the universe they had both just abandoned. The abandoned mining station hung at the edge of the Kaltorian Rift like a skeletal relic, its once busy docking arms reaching into the void like grasping fingers. Quantum storms flickered in the distance, painting the backdrop with flashes of energy that defied the normal laws of physics, appearing before they happened, or looping in impossible patterns. Inside the station's restored environmental control room, Roger stared through the reinforced viewport at the spectacle. For 7 days, they had worked to make a small section of the station habitable, scavenging parts from abandoned equipment and repurposing systems with Bink's technical expertise and Vicaria's surprising knowledge of engineering. It's beautiful in a terrifying way, Vicaria commented, joining him at the viewport. She had adapted to their fugitive lifestyle with remarkable ease, exchanging her royal garments for practical utility clothes they'd found in storage. Even in these plain garments, she maintained a regal bearing that Roger found increasingly difficult to ignore. I've spent my life running from one score to the next, Roger said, watching a quantum filament appear and disappear in defiance of temporal logic. Never stayed anywhere long enough to really see it. And now, she prompted, now I'm trapped in an abandoned mining station with a warrior princess and a sarcastic droid, hiding from both tournament security and probably your royal family. Not exactly how I planned my big score. Vicaria's tail swished, amusement he'd learned. Life rarely follows our plans. My entire existence was mapped out from birth: royal education, combat training, diplomatic marriage, political career. Running away with a charming fraud wasn't in the schedule. Charming, huh? Roger grinned, latching onto the compliment. Don't let it go to your head, she warned, though her tail betrayed her with another swish. As they stood side by side, Roger realized how comfortable their silence had become. Each day, the awkwardness between them had diminished as they worked together for survival, finding an unexpected rhythm in their partnership. Vicaria, he began, then hesitated. Vic, I've been thinking about what happens next. She turned to face him fully, curiosity in her green eyes. And we can't hide forever. Eventually supplies will run out, or someone will find us, or we'll get tired of each other's company, she suggested. No, Roger said quickly, surprising himself with his vehemence. I don't think that would happen. The admission hung between them, more revealing than he'd intended. Vicaria stepped closer, her tail uncurling to its full length behind her. Then what are you suggesting? Before Roger could respond, Bink burst into the control room, optical sensor pulsing frantically. Multiple vessels approaching, the droid announced. Configuration indicates Xantarian enforcement craft and a Lycanid royal cruiser. Vicaria's eyes widened. My family, she whispered. They found us. How? Roger demanded. The quantum storm should mask our presence. The storms have temporarily subsided, Bink explained. Our location is currently exposed. Roger's mind raced through escape options, old habits taking over. We could try to outrun them in my ship, or hide deeper in the station, or— No more running, Vicaria interrupted, her voice firm. I am tired of running from who I am, and who I could be. She placed a hand on Roger's arm, her touch sending an unexpected warmth through him. Whatever happens next, we face it together. No more cons, no more pretending. Roger looked into her eyes and saw not a princess or a warrior, but simply a woman asking him to be brave in a way he never had before, to be honest, to be real, to be himself. Okay, he nodded, covering her hand with his. Together. As the approaching ships docked with the station, Roger, Vicaria, and Bink waited in the main reception area. No weapons, no escape plans, no elaborate deceptions, just the truth, whatever it might cost them. The airlock cycled open. A contingent of Lycanid royal guards entered, their silver armor gleaming under the station's emergency lighting. Behind them strode a regal figure whose resemblance to Vicaria was unmistakable, taller, older, with darker violet skin, and a silver tail adorned with ceremonial rings of office. Father, Vicaria acknowledged, stepping forward with her head held high. High Counselor Aaron Acaster's stern expression betrayed no emotion as he surveyed his daughter and the human beside her. You have caused quite the diplomatic incident, daughter. I have honored my bond, she replied evenly, as our traditions demand. A bond formed through accident and manipulation, her father countered, his gaze shifting to Roger with undisguised suspicion. Roger straightened his posture, attempting to project a dignity he'd never needed in his previous life. Sir, I admit the circumstances of our meeting were unorthodox. And yes, I was at the tournament under false pretenses. But whatever brought us together, my feelings for your daughter are real. The High Counselor's tail twitched in what Roger hoped wasn't aggression. Feelings? And what of honor, integrity? The qualities our people value above all else. Vicaria stepped closer to Roger, her hand finding his. Father, I've spent my life bound by tradition, duty, and the expectations of our house. But with Roger, Even amid chaos and uncertainty, I've found something I never had at home. And what is that? Her father asked, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. Choice, she answered simply. The freedom to choose my own path. Roger squeezed her hand gently before facing her father directly. Sir, I'm not the man your daughter deserves. I've been a liar and a cheat for most of my adult life, but meeting Vicaria has changed something in me. If you take her back to your world, I'll understand. But know that I intend to become someone worthy of her, even if it takes the rest of my life. The High Counselor studied Roger with an intensity that made him want to fidget, but he held the Lycanid's gaze steadily. After what felt like an eternity, the older man's tail relaxed slightly. The Xantarians demand justice for your crimes. I'll accept whatever punishment, Roger began. However, the High Counselor continued, raising a hand to silence him, the Lycanid Confederation has negotiated an alternative arrangement. Vicaria and Roger exchanged confused glances. What arrangement? She asked cautiously. Her father's expression remained stern, but something like resignation softened his eyes. The tale of the human fraud and the Lycanid princess has spread across 17 star systems. It seems your droid companion sold the story rights to Galactic Entertainment Networks. Bink's optical sensor dimmed sheepishly as both Roger and Vicaria turned to stare at the droid. I calculated a 74.3% probability that we would require significant financial resources regardless of outcome, Bink explained defensively. Additionally, public sentiment dramatically reduces the likelihood of harsh sentencing. The droid's calculations were correct, the High Counselor admitted reluctantly. The public has become invested in your story. Offers of amnesty have been proposed in exchange for exclusive documentation rights for a continuing series. Roger blinked in disbelief. You're saying we're celebrities now? Apparently, the older Lycanid said with evident distaste. Star-crossed lovers resonate with the public imagination. The Xantarians are willing to drop all charges in exchange for your participation in promotional events for next year's tournament. Vicaria's tail began to sway with growing excitement. And the Lycanid High Council. Her father's tail finally relaxed completely. Officially, your bonding has been recognized as legitimate, if irregular. You are exempt from the traditional diplomatic marriage arrangements, though you will be expected to make appearances at official functions. Roger felt as if a massive weight had suddenly lifted from his shoulders. We're free to go? Not entirely, the High Counselor corrected. There are conditions. First, Mr. Lovell must undergo proper Lycanid cultural training. Second, as your bonded mate, he must learn at least basic combat skills. Your mother insists. And third? Vicaria prompted, knowing her father too well. A smile finally cracked the older Lycanid's stern facade. And third, you both must visit home regularly. Your mother misses you, daughter. She is eager to meet the human who captured our most independent child. 5 years later, the luxury resort on Etheria Prime catered to the wealthiest clientele in the galaxy, offering privacy, splendor, and views of the famous Rainbow Nebula that changed colors with the planet's rotation. On a private terrace overlooking the iridescent waters of the luminous sea, Roger lounged on a floating chair, watching Vicaria demonstrate combat moves to their daughter. At 3 years old, Luna Aranacaster Lovell already showed signs of her mixed heritage, violet skin a shade lighter than her mother's, with Roger's blue eyes and a silver tail that she controlled with impressive precision for her age. Keep your balance centered, little star, Vicaria instructed as Luna attempted a simple defensive stance. Feel the energy flow from your core to your limbs. Like this, Mama? Luna asked, her tail swishing with concentration. Perfect, Vicaria praised, her own tail curling with pride. Roger smiled at the scene, still sometimes unable to believe this was his life. The notorious lunar liar had transformed into a respectable businessman, using his talents for deception in more legitimate pursuits, specifically security consulting for high-profile targets. As it turned out, who better to protect against cons than a reformed con man? Bink hovered nearby, recording the lesson. The droid had upgraded to a more advanced chassis over the years, but retained the same sardonic personality. Combat proficiency at 23% above average for her age group, Bink noted, a significant improvement from last month's assessment. She gets that from her mother, Roger commented proudly. And her penchant for creative storytelling? Vicaria asked with a raised eyebrow, joining Roger on the terrace as Luna practiced her forms. Definitely me, Roger admitted, though I prefer to call it strategic communication these days. Vicaria laughed, the sound still as captivating to him as it had been the first time he'd heard it. She settled beside him, her tail automatically curling around his waist in the intimate gesture that had become second nature to them. Who would have thought, she mused, watching their daughter, that accidentally grabbing my tail would lead to all this? Roger reached out, deliberately running his fingers along the length of her silver tail, a gesture that had evolved from a cultural taboo to their personal symbol of connection. I'm starting to think it wasn't an accident, he said thoughtfully. The universe has a strange way of putting people exactly where they need to be. Even notorious frauds and duty-bound princesses, she teased. Especially us, he confirmed, pulling her closer. Some people need a little cosmic intervention. Luna bounded over, her energy inexhaustible. Papa, did you see my fighting stance? Mama says I'm getting as good as you. That's not setting the bar very high, Bink interjected. Your father still loses 82.7% of practice matches. But I win at the important things, Roger countered, gathering his family close as the nebula overhead shifted from azure to violet, matching Vicaria's skin perfectly. Bink's optical sensor pulsed softly as the droid recorded the moment. Family unit harmony at 98.4%, the droid noted in its data log. Outcome probability calculation, successful beyond all statistical models. Conclusion: sometimes improbability is the most logical result. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Roger gazed at his wife and daughter, the family he never expected to have, the life he never dared to dream of. You know, he said to Vicaria, echoing words from long ago, I'm beginning to believe there are no accidents. She smiled, her bright green eyes reflecting the starlight. And I'm beginning to believe, she replied, pulling him into a kiss, that sometimes the best thing that can happen to a princess is meeting a fox, not a prince. Luna giggled at her parents' display of affection, her tail swishing happily behind her. Roger had spent his life running cons, searching for the next big score. Instead, he'd found something he never knew he was looking for, a place to belong, a truth worth embracing, and a love worth becoming honest for. In a galaxy of infinite possibilities, he had finally found his home. Dear stargazers and cosmic adventurers, if you've made it this far in Roger and Vicaria's journey, then you've witnessed what happens when sacred tales get touched, royal traditions get bent, and con artists find something worth being honest for. Like Han Solo discovering there's more to life than fast ships and quick scores, or Star-Lord learning that family isn't always who you're born to, but who you choose to stand beside, Roger found his place in the vastness of the galaxy, not through the perfect scheme, but through the perfect accident. And perhaps that's the greatest con of all, the universe making us believe we're in control of our destinies when really, we're just one accidental tail touch away from changing our lives forever. Whether you're more like our silver-tongued scoundrel or our duty-bound warrior princess, I hope this tale brought some interstellar joy to your corner of the cosmos. After all, in a universe full of quantum storms and six-armed champions, sometimes the most improbable outcome is the most logical result. So, what did you think of "You Touched My Tail, Human"? Did this odd cosmic romance hit light speed for you, or did it crash and burn like Roger in his first real fight? Drop a comment in the quantum stream and let me know if our star-crossed lovers' adventure was worthy of the Galactic Entertainment Network.